Hello friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time, and I'm here to talk today about herbs and dehydrating them. Now, it's not like it's the first video I've ever done, but there's always more information I can add, and I've always got more people coming in that ask me questions about dehydrating herbs, so I thought I'd go over some of the basics and what you can dry. And this is specifically about herbs, not about vegetables and fruits. We'll be doing more of that in other videos. So before I continue on, I do want to direct you to the last dehydrating video I did, and I think that's just a general one, and how I dehydrate in the wintertime off-grid. And I'll link to that right up here so you can check that out. Because what I do at this time of the year is different, because I'm running off electricity because we have solar power, and when we're getting more sunlight, which even in the spring it's not really a lot because it's our most rainiest time of the year, we're still getting more overall daylight throughout the whole day because we're in longer days. And so I can start running my dehydrator all day long from, early spring on clear through late fall, and not have to worry about draining our battery banks. So that's what's been going on. And also, before I continue, I want to let you know that today is actually the middle of April that I'm shooting this video, but it will be going up in May. So don't let that confuse you according to the things that I'm showing you that I currently have going on as far as dehydrating and harvesting, because a month from now, by the time you're seeing this video, it's going to be very different, the things that I'll be harvesting. Well, I shouldn't say very different. I should be harvesting a lot of the same stuff, but I'll also be harvesting a lot more other things. So just so you know where we're at, my garden update videos are the only ones that stay pretty current to the time that I've recorded them. But just so you understand, I do this in order to, it's one of the ways I'm prepared for whatever life events get thrown my way, is being several weeks ahead of my videos and having them scheduled to publish. Okay, so let's move on. That's enough of that. So what I have today, this is my first batch. This is not very much to start with, but of dandelion leaves. Now, I've already been doing the flowers, because basically how you want to do it is you want to harvest them in order. So typically you're going to be harvesting your flowers first, because they're the first things to really start coming in. Not that you don't see the leaves first, but they're really too small to do much with by the time the flowers start coming in and blooming at first. Here's what I have so far as of this time of dandelion flowers. This jar is almost filled. I'll be filling up several more of those jars. And so now I'm on to the leaves. I wait until the leaves get to be a significant size before I start to harvest them. So this is my first harvest. These are dry and ready to put in a jar. And so let me show you in a bit how I do that. Let's talk about some of the points of dehydrating. When you're talking about herbs, and this is just some of my herbs, I'll show some of them here in a bit. I don't know if I'll go through all of them because I just brought a bunch in just to give you an example. But you want to keep your temperature between 90 degrees and 110 degrees. A lot of times I'll go 115, but each year I start going, no, I think I'm going to go a little bit lower than that. It does take longer for them to dehydrate, but the lower of the temp you go, the more nutrients you're going to preserve in those herbs. And I learned this a little bit later on. I used to dehydrate them higher, not thinking about it, but it really shouldn't be. It really should be 110 should be the highest. I think I've said in the past 115, but like I say, each year I go a little bit lower. But I do know, 90 to 110 is pretty safe. You may even want to just say 95 be a good temperature. And so your herbs are going to be more fragile than your fruits and vegetables. So that's what you want to do. And it can take anywhere from a few hours to maybe up to 2 days, depending on the herb and how much of the stem and thicker parts that you have in there in your dehydrator. Now, this is using electric dehydrator. A really excellent way to go that a lot of people do is to make their own drying racks that they set up, or whether they hang or they hang their herbs upside down. This is a really great way to do it, but because I am always dehydrating in high volume, I need to keep my electric dehydrators running. And I'm not using any electricity anyway because I'm always running them off solar power. And I have 3 dehydrators now. 2 of them, or actually 3 of them I bought because I had another one. The first one I got at an auction. It was brand new. And then the other 3 I got at garage sales for $5 and $3 each. $5 being the most expensive. And they were all like brand new. They had either never been used or used once or twice. And so you can look at garage sales. Somebody, it seems like, always has a dehydrator for sale. So, or secondhand thrift stores, whatever you have local in your area. And all of mine are the same brand. They're all the Nesco, and you know, the round ones that hold the trays just like this. And I like that because the trays all, they can all go with each other. So I don't have to worry about what tray goes with what. They all fit. And so I like that size. And then the other thing I like to do, and also, by the way, I'll link below to the dehydrator I have so you can check that out. It's always actually in my links. But then I always have these, especially for herbs. These are, they call it clean a screen. And these are particularly nice for anything that's small. Here's the drawback to a dehydrator like this, is you're talking about all plastic parts. And it's just one of those areas that I have to compromise on because it's the best thing I can do to keep a lot of herbs dehydrating. Now, one can spend a lot of money on a Excalibur with the stainless steel trays. That is going to be the very best way you can go if you can afford it, the money and the space. Because for me to dehydrate as much as I'm doing, I'd have to have 2 or 3 of those. And again, I have high volumes, and there's reasons for that. And part of that is because of all the many uses I have for all my herbs and all the many herbs that I'm drying. But I'm not just drying herbs, I'm drying fruits and vegetables. I do a lot of canning, but I also do a lot of dehydrating. And the reason for that is, part of the reason why is that for storage, it requires a lot less storage because they take up less room, and you don't have to worry so much about losing a seal or, you know, going through the whole canning process and all that. Because even if these lose their seal, they're still going to stay good for a very long period of time. You don't have to worry about spoilage. And sometimes it does happen. But since using the vacuum sealing with the brake bleeder and the food saver tops, I've had, you know, pretty good success with that. And so I have a video just on how to use these. Mostly I use wide mouth, but I recommend getting the set with the regular and the wide mouth. Because you can see here, I do use the regular mouth ones too, and I do vacuum seal in regular mouth. It's just that most of the time you'll see me doing it, you'll see me using wide mouth. So what I do with the herbs is after they're fully dry, I just check them throughout the day. I like to be able to rotate the trays. That's the other thing I like. Typically the ones on the top in the Nesco are going to be the ones that get dry first. Then I take that off, and then I'll deal with those while the other ones are still drying. And if everything's kind of taken a while, I'll just rotate the tray so that everything can dry pretty much equally. So what I do with stuff like this, now Dandelion Greens, eventually what they do is, the only thing I really do with the dried ones is they go into my mixed greens blend. You've heard me talk about it a lot, and especially in more recent videos. And the Dandelion Greens I consider kind of one of my main vegetables to go in there. And so all I do is I'll put them into a small bowl like this, okay? And then I just take my hands and I just smash them up. You can powder it up and make a green powder if you want. I prefer to have it in flakes. And the thing I like about doing it this way is you may come across like this. These ones didn't get fully dry. The stems didn't get fully dry. You can either put these back in your dehydrator, or you can toss them, whatever you want to do. And that way you can feel and see if there's anything in there that isn't fully dehydrated. Then you just put your canning funnel in there and just dump it in there. I didn't really need it for that little bit, but you know, if you got a lot that you're pouring in there at a time, then your funnel is going to be the easiest way to do it. And then you put your lid on there and make sure you write on there what's in here. I'll get to that. I'll do that later when I'm done shooting this video. I do not bother vacuum sealing it when I'm first starting and filling up a jar. Once the jar is full, then I'll vacuum seal it. It's just kind of pointless, and it's not a big deal because I'm going to keep adding to it pretty much daily. And so that's how I do that. Now let me show you what I have here. This is what I've harvested today. I do have a bunch of stuff on the dehydrator right now from yesterday, but this is stuff I harvested this morning. And so what I have here is lemon balm, catnip, and feverfew, and I'll show you a picture here so you can get a closer look at it. So then what I like to do after I've got my herbs all picked, typically I might not pick them all together like this, it just depends. But if I have them together like this, I carefully pick them up and I'll spray them down with my homemade vinegar. And this is a nice high acidic vinegar. And the purpose for that is that it's just to kill anything that could be on there. You know, I don't know if the dog may have peed on them or the neighbor's dog may have peed on them or what other dirt and stuff that might be on there. So I just like to spray them down to just kind of disinfect. And it's all natural, homemade, organic vinegar, so I don't have to worry about that. I'll let it sit for a few minutes and then I'll rinse them off. Then I'll put them on my dehydrator. And so these are ready, they've already been sprayed down and these are ready to be rinsed off. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and rinse these off and let them drain a little bit, and then I'll show you how I lay them out on the trays. So while those are draining, I'll go ahead and talk about some of the other stuff here, and then I'll show you how I lay those out on the tray. So right here, these very, very leggy looking pansies or violas I just got today at our local nursery. You can tell these ones are from last year, which is okay. They're very aromatic. I'm just loving these. Now, when it comes to pansies, I go with well, I call them all pansies, but really these are violas. These are the Johnny Jump Ups, the smaller ones. They are going to be the most hardy ones I found, and they're also going to be the most they're going to have the most benefits in them. That's what you're going to find, is the ones that are most closely related or really are your wild herbs. In most cases, you're going to find are going to have the highest medicinal value and nutritional value. So you can get the big, beautiful pansies that they're cultivated, and they'll have some good properties in them, but just not as high as the smaller one. And I find that the smaller ones are most likely to come back and just be healthier in general. So these ones are going to need some TLC because they're kind of older, especially this one because it's very, very leggy. But I don't have a problem with that. I'll be pinching a lot of this stuff off, the green, the flowers, and I'll just be putting them on my dehydrator and dehydrating those up and then getting these in pots. I'll leave some of these. But so I'm not going to take them all off at once, because I always get nervous about taking it all off at once because I don't want to put it in too much a shock. And anyway, and then I'm going to put these in pots out on my deck. I have a special place I really like to grow my pansies, as you can see in a picture right here. Now, if you're interested in pansies and the benefits, a couple years ago I did a video on that. I'll go ahead and link to that right up here. But keep in mind, I can't link to all the videos I have on the different herbs. So what I will also do at the end, in the end screen, I will link to my playlist that has all the different herb videos that I have out so far, but I have many more to come. Some are wild herbs, some are going to be culinary herbs. I only have one culinary one out right now, and then a lot of them are just your other herbs like the marshmallow, the yarrow, the feverfew, and all that kind of stuff. And right here are the pansies so far from this year, which isn't much, but these are all pansies that have come back from last year. So they're just kind of getting in there. Remember, it's middle of April that I'm shooting this video. Here is the start of my third jar of stinging nettle. So right here, one of the things I like to dehydrate up, I think of this actually more as a vegetable, but this is my grape leaves. These ones are from 2018. I did dehydrate up several jars worth. Sometimes I have to prune the grapevines back because they just get out of hand and start overshadowing too much stuff. So when I do that, I take the leaves, I dehydrate them up because they just have lots of great benefits, and I do have a video on that. I think should be in that playlist. I've got rose petals, calendula, nasturtium flowers, echinacea. This is woolly lamb's ear. This is lavender, and this is marshmallow leaves and flowers. The reason they have the brown lids is because these are the ones I'm using right now in my herbal teas and stuff, so they stay out here on my shelf. I like these craft lids because they look prettier. People ask me about these a lot. Now keep in mind, when I first bought these, I got them on Amazon, and I'm going to give you the link, the same link I bought them from. But when I got them, I must have found them at the right time because I got a much better deal than what they are now. They're still not terrible. You might be able to find them cheaper, but I'll go ahead and link to them below. But keep in mind, these are craft lids. They're not going to necessarily be approved safe for using for food. So what do? I take a little bit of beeswax, and I actually take the lid, turn it upside down, and set it on my wood stove or on my hot plate, put a couple of beads of beeswax in there, let it melt, and then I'll take a brush and spread it around in there and give it a good even coat to just, coat it really good and make it more food safe. You can also buy liners to go inside them too that are food safe, but I believe they're plastic. So you know, you just kind of, the nice thing about those is that also makes them leak proof. So anyway, if you're trying to keep your stuff a little more, not just leak proof, but a little more air proof too, that could be a good option. Some other herbs I have here, lemon balm. This is, you know, most of these are going to be from last year. Lavender leaves. So yes, I dehydrate the lavender leaves just like I do the flowers. Catnip, pineapple weed. This is red clover. I actually didn't mark that, but I guess I didn't need to because the only jar I have, and it's pretty obvious, is red clover. This is black tea from my Camellia japonica, and I have a video on that, and I was pronouncing it all wrong in the video, but you know, I didn't know. So anyway, yarrow, mint, nasturtium leaves. Now the reason I do the leaves and the flowers differently is they have different purposes. And I did talk about that in my nasturtium video. I did throw an herb, you know, a culinary herb, oregano, but it's also medicinal. I've also got other wild herbs like this. This was harvested from out in the woods, and this is salal berries and leaves. Very good for colds and flus and many other ailments. And have a video talking about those as well. Again, this is just some of what I have. I have tons of herbs that come from my garden that I dehydrate. Flowers, wild herbs, just all kinds of stuff. So really, what can you dehydrate? You can dehydrate anything. It's just how you do it. Again, you don't want your temperature too high. Some of the other benefits of dehydrating your herbs is that they're so easy to use when they're dehydrated. Once you've got them in the dehydrated form, they're all ready for using and making your own herbal infusions, which we commonly call herbal teas, and making tinctures and extracts. So that's one of the reasons why I love to dehydrate them up. And then also, besides all those, they're ready to go for making infused oils. So I infuse the calendula, the rose petal, the lavender, and the pansies, and the marshmallow all together into an oil that I use in my homemade skin cream. So that's 5 different herbs that I grow that I use in my homemade skin cream. Some other ones you could do are the plantain, the comfrey, the yarrow. These are all excellent herbs for putting into a salve, a healing salve. But all the other ones I mentioned, like lavender and calendula, those are excellent too. Dandelion flowers are also another great one for putting in the oil for making skin creams and salves. Oh, and then the other thing I really like to use my herbs in, I always am doing, which is another reason why I like to keep a whole bunch coming in, is any of the ones that are going to be good for skincare, they go into my soaps. Not all of them in the same soap, but I'll vary it up. You know, I might have one with rose petals, one with dandelion flowers, one with calendula. Sometimes I'll use a combination. Comfrey, borage, pansies, of course. That's another great one for skincare. And marshmallow. And so I have all these dehydrated herbs, and then they go into the different soaps that I make and then put up on my Etsy store. Now, some people ask me, they don't realize that I always talk about my Etsy store, but they don't know. It's just called Rain Country Homestead. But at the end of every video, and the first link that you see in the description box, is the link to my Etsy store. And so I don't always think to say that, but you know, it's right there. You see that bright red flower, the burgundy nasturtium flower that pops up usually right in here at the end of my video. That's actually a link directly to my Etsy store if you're interested in checking it out. But I also have very many videos showing how to do some of the different things that I sell in my store, including how to make your own skin cream. And I have one specifically on how to do the infused oil that I then use in my skin cream. So you can check those out. I'll go ahead and link to the infused oil one right there, and that should link to the skin cream one, which eventually I will reshoot a video on that. Okay, now let's get on to laying out the herbs on the trays. I want you to see how I do it, because some people don't really realize how you can lay them out, and you know, there's always a lot of question there. So I'm going to start with the catnip, and I didn't pick tons today. Oh, I got lemon balm in there too. And one thing is, if you're going to mix them together in the same colander on the same tray, you better make sure you know the difference between what's what. So let me put the catnip and the feverfew on the same tray. Get this so you can see out of the way, so you can see what I'm doing here. Now you can choose to pull off as much of the thick stems as you want, because those aren't going to dehydrate up very well. However, once the leaves are all dry, if the stems are still very soft, you can do like I did with the dandelion. You can just it's really easy just to pull the dried leaves off. They'll just crumble right off the stem, and you can just toss the stem. But the stem is, you know, it works too in the tinctures for pain. So that's what the feverfew is for. It's for pain, inflammation, and for helping with the stomach. It's really good for digestion and liver health because it is one of those bitters. And then same thing with catnip. I usually combine the catnip with the feverfew when I'm using it as a pain tincture, extract, or even eating fresh. I will eat them fresh when they're growing like this. I don't even use the extract. I just go pick it right off the plant, and I'll pick a sprig of each and just chew them up and eat them, and they really help me a lot if I'm having any kind of pain. The way that catnip works, let me throw this in here, for pain is that it's more of a sedative. So especially if you've got like a headache or pain from tension in your shoulders or whatever because you're stressed out, the catnip will help in that way because it's a sedative, it's very calming. And so that to me is another reason why I like taking the two together. I just find it to be most effective that way. So anyway, you can see how I have this piled up. These will dry just fine that way. You don't have to lay them out with big spaces in between them. I'm just going to try to leave a bigger space between the catnip and the feverfew so that I don't get them confused when I go, because sometimes once the things are dehydrated, they're a little harder to tell apart, but usually I can tell. I mean, you can see here the catnip stems are red where the feverfew ones are green. So that's how I pile those up, and I also have a few dandelion flowers in here. It's been very cloudy lately, so the dandelions have not been opening up until much later in the day. So I usually been waiting until the afternoon to go pick them. I try to get them as soon as they open. Usually in summertime when we have real nice days, they'll open early in the morning, and then I like to pick them as soon as they open up. Now that brings me to another issue that I get a lot of questions on the dandelions. Okay, so let me show you a close-up of these dandelion flowers. I'm hoping the light's not being too glary. I should probably take a picture and insert it, but anyway, you can see that they got a little bit of white trying to come on them. I've had a lot of people say, how do you get your flowers to actually come out like this? Well, they do try to seed out still, but you can see for the most part, they're still very yellow. They haven't turned completely to seed. And part of that is going to depend on the time of the day that you pick them. And also, you want to get them as soon as they open up. And you also want to try to, the older the flower is, because the flower is only going to last for a few days. The older it is, the more likely it's going to go to seed when you put it in your dehydrator. And if your dehydrator is too hot, that's more likely going to turn them into a puff ball. If no matter what heat that you set it on, it still does that, then I recommend just letting them dry a little more naturally. But then again, I've seen dandelion flowers sit on, just sit and air dry, and those can still go to seed. So I do think having kind of a moderate temperature, like 95 to 100 degrees on your dandelion flowers is going to be your best bet. I also believe that the spraying them down with the vinegar helps a little bit in that. And that was the other thing I was going to say about the vinegar. I've noticed that when I spray them down with the vinegar, even though I rinse it off, I found that it does seem to help the herbs retain their color a little bit better once they're dry, which also leads me to believe it's going to help them retain their nutrient value. Now, this is just a guess on my part. I don't know that. I don't have any scientific proof on that. It's just what my hypothesis based on that, because I think if something's retaining its color, we know the same thing with canned goods. We have canned goods in storage. If they get exposed to too much light, they start to fade in color, and we also know that they lose more nutrients when they're exposed to too much light. And so it's very important to keep your canned goods in a dark place. Well, the same thing is going to happen with your dehydrated foods. And again, it seems like the vinegar just helps preserve them for longer, and they just hold out better. Now, one of the things I wanted to mention before I finished up is what is one of the cons? It's the only one I can think of when it comes to dehydrating herbs. Well, when you're talking about culinary herbs like oregano, rosemary, thyme, basil, those kind of things, they do lose a lot of their flavor, and mints, of course. They lose a lot of their flavor once they're dehydrated. Some people like to take their herbs and put them in ice cube trays with either oil or water, depending on how they're going to use them, and then freeze them. and that way that's going to preserve the flavor a lot better. Now, dehydrating is an excellent way to preserve the nutrients. Really, it's a pretty good way. Dehydrating foods in general, you're going to preserve a lot more nutrients than you will in a canning process. But not everything we want dehydrated. However, the freezing is going to save a lot more of the flavor if you do it that way. Now, freeze-dried herbs may respond differently, but we don't have a freeze dryer. So that's the only con that I personally see when it comes to dehydrating herbs, is when you're talking about your culinary herbs and the flavor just not being as intense. And so I find that when I love making peppermint tea, especially during the time of the year that the peppermints and the other mints are growing, and I take a big handful of that and stick it in my pot. Oh my goodness, it makes the best tasting mint tea. It's so much better than the dehydrated. But the dehydrated is good too, and I use it all through the year. So I'll still be dehydrating. Like right here is just a jar from 2018 that I just opened up, or one that I didn't finish filling, but I have several of these from 2018 I'm still going to be putting a lot away, but I'll also be making lots of tea from the fresh herbs because it just tastes best. And I suppose I could freeze those up too, but if I started doing that, my freezer would be full of nothing but herbs, and I need to save my freezer for other things, like our, venison and elk and other things that we freeze up, and wild-caught salmon and so on and so forth. So yeah, I can't put all of that stuff in the freezer. All right, well, I hope you found this helpful, and if you have any more questions, go ahead and put your comments below, and I will try my best to answer your questions. And don't forget to check out my other herb-related videos and any other videos I have on preserving and dehydrating that you might be interested in. And also, if I can't answer your question right away, I might just compile it with other people's questions and try to remember to get to it in another video down the road as I do more dehydrating throughout the season. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed this video and that you learned something new. Thanks for watching. Take care, and God bless.